So Donald Trump, the Twitter tweeter toddler, is having a panic attack over the film industry today, and effectively it even made news in Korea. This is one of Trump's tweets. That's what he does all the time, is tweets out crazy stuff, and they have to translate his tweets in Korean and then talk about the meaning of said tweets. So what's going on? He wants to do a tariff 100%, I guess, on foreign films. This was the headlines in the American news then. Trump repeats threat to tax foreign films, suggests move on furniture imports. And when I saw this, the first thing that came to my mind is like, Trump wants to tax Netflix and chill, meaning that he wants to tax what you're watching on Netflix, basically 100%, and then tax the sofa that you're sitting on at home while you're watching said content for reals. And basically Trump is trying to get a cut from whatever you do in everyday life. That's what it feels like to me. This is the actual tweet here. We'll read it. It says, our movie making business has been stolen from the United States of America by other countries. So the way Trump always speaks, he always acts like every country in the world is a big thief and USA is a victim. That's how Trump likes to speak. He also says, just like stealing candy from a baby. So I guess in this example, movies are the candy and USA or Trump is the baby. So I guess that's how we read this. California, with its weak and incompetent governor, has been particularly hard hit. Therefore, in order to solve this long time, never-ending problem, I will be imposing 100% tariff on any and all movies that are made outside of the United States. Okay? Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again, President DJT. Now, guys, this is actually an extremely complicated issue because the film industry is inherently international and global. And when we talk about, foreign film, what do we define that as? So, for example, Marvel movies or, the Mission Impossible movies, sometimes they film overseas. And just for frankly, guys, it's cool to be on location in another country, right? You don't have to film everything in America, at least in my opinion, shouldn't need to. But according to Trump, you should film everything in America. The other issue is, what about pre-production and post-production? Like, how are we counting this stuff? Be it writing the script, casting the actors, stuff. Where do you have all your offices? Post-production, be it all of the editing, coloring, CG, this stuff. How are we counting that? And then, is there a certain percentage of the production that needs to be in USA to be considered an American film versus a foreign film? What about the financing? Any number of things. I'll just say it's really quite complicated. So it all depends on how you define foreign film. On top of that, there are real jobs with this stuff, and I feel like Trump must be hating on Georgia or something like that, because this was the news last month. It says Marvel leaves Georgia. Remember also Georgia, where the Hyundai plant is, where Trump had his ICE people go raid there. So I mean, Georgia's getting hit hard lately. But Marvel leaves Georgia to film superhero movies in UK. Gutting state's movie industry, and this is a quote from a local person, you feel like a jilted lover. Or this, Disney's Marvel abandons Georgia, taking livelihoods with it. And I do understand that these are very sensitive topics, so I don't want to make light of people losing their jobs. I don't. It's real. I used to work in the film industry. You guys don't know, I lived in LA, worked in Hollywood. I have a lot of friends that are still there, and I have a lot of friends that are really struggling. I actually see it all the time on social media where people are just, openly complaining that it's hard to get a job. And it's bad when people because normally you kind of keep that stuff private, but I'm just saying it's bad enough to where people are openly complaining about the job market. It's tough. And then I have friends privately who tell me it's even worse than what you hear in public. So I just want to make sure it's clear. I totally understand this stuff, and I don't want to make light of anyone losing their jobs, to make that clear. Regarding the whole situation in Georgia, so when Trump tweets out something, it doesn't mean everything he says is 100% wrong. Just he's kind of crazy the way that he implements things, because there are other ways to address helping Americans opposed to just tweeting out and saying, I'm going to tax everyone and put all the money in my pocket. This is what the Georgia production film and TV looks like. It's in decline. You guys can see it. And I think I read somewhere it was down 50% in some situations from the peak. One of the things that I was thinking about with the Georgia situation also is that Trump could be theoretically, and just think of a different way to think about it, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to put tariffs and everything and tax everyone, he could announce theoretically that, hey, I'm going to support a certain industry or whatever, and increase funding to said thing. I'm just saying, for example. But he's not really interested in jobs, in my opinion. He's interested in putting money in his pocket. In terms of productions, this was interesting. It says Marvel is making 2 new Avengers movies and the next Spider-Man at a facility outside London. So I guess the UK is really aggressive in getting Disney over there. And then Barbie and the Wicked movie were, I guess, were also filmed in the UK. And then it was saying that many films are also produced in Canada and Australia. There's a certain locations that are more advantageous. Regarding the, Avengers or Spider-Man stuff, if all of it's in the studio, yes, then you could probably film that anywhere, and then you have a case of like, hey, why aren't you filming in USA? I totally understand this stuff. But the problem with this stuff is like, how much do we want Trump involved in sort of like every single industry? And one of the things that I was thinking about is the best way to think about Trump is he's like that manager that overly, micromanages people, and no one likes that. And if you guys ever had a boss at work that like tells you everything that you should be doing and how to do it, and you like just breeze over the shoulder all the time, and then I guess publicly shames you with tweets, you just don't want that kind of person. You want someone who works with industry to solve the problems of jobs. So, for example, this is actually from Georgia. The Savannah Film Alliance says, as the headline, warns Trump movie tariff could destabilize Georgia's film economy. And I want to read their statement just to give you different points of view on this stuff. So my, I guess, official stance is, I don't want any tariffs by Trump in any of this kind of thing, because this particular one was just an accounting nightmare. And again, the film industry is heavily globalized and all over the place. And then here's their statement. It says, President Trump's proposal for a 100% tariff on foreign-made films is not only unclear, but potentially destabilizing for states like Georgia, which have already experienced a marked decline in film production. The modern film industry is deeply global, so the same stuff that I was talking about. They also give more details. They say, on a single film, financing, shooting, editing, post-production, and many other aspects of production often take place in multiple countries. If such a tariff were imposed, it is uncertain what would even qualify as a, quote, foreign film. That ambiguity alone could discourage studios from moving forward with projects. So basically, because Trump put in a tax, no one would understand how this tax is actually be implemented, and they want to stay in compliance. It's just like, let's just wait it out. And I think a lot of companies have been saying that. Basically, Trump's going to be gone in 3 years or so. Let's just wait it out. Let's see what more they have to say from Georgia. Beyond the practical challenges of enforcement, this kind of policy could also invite retaliation from other countries, so possible trade wars. And if you guys don't know, I mean, films is a big business for USA, exporting, cultural products all around the world. And in fact, when you make positive things to where American characters are viewed as heroes and, attractive, etc., it's actually very positive for the American image. And you don't really want to get in a trade war over this stuff when America does very, very well with films, television, stuff like that in terms of exports. So, try to explain this stuff to Trumpers, maybe they don't get any of it, but that's okay. I'm still trying my best. Let's read more here. It says, okay, so we don't want a trade war. Inflate costs for distributors and audiences and place independent films at a severe disadvantage. Georgia has invested heavily in its film workforce and infrastructure, and those gains could be eroded if global collaboration becomes economically punitive, right? So they're saying, you may stop all productions because the way that maybe sometimes you do business, maybe you want to use, another studio in collaboration for, various reasons. And like, if you halt all production, then we all lose essentially with Trump tariffs. At a time when the state is already seeing fewer big budget productions, what Georgia needs are policies that attract and retain projects, not ones that add more uncertainty. A tariff of this kind would risk doing far more harm than good, both nationally and locally. And I want to talk a bit about the Korean industry because it relates to Georgia, and I'll explain in a moment here. So if you don't know, this is the big news here in Korea also, but it was a few years ago. The movie Parasite was a fantastic movie, the best movie that year. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. If you look at, say, TV shows recently, Squid Game is also very, very good. And then here's another one. This is actually a new movie. I think it opened this week. We haven't seen it yet. We'll try to see it as soon as we can. It's called No Other Choice. It was highly successful. I think it was at Venice Film Festival and others. It opened in Busan, actually. We didn't get a chance to see it because we're stupid enough to not buy tickets to the opening. We should have. We just didn't get them. And I want to mention this stuff because in Korea, the news about the Trump tariff thing was big news because to say Koreans who make movies they want to sell, all around the world. And if there's a 100% tariff on, that's obviously not great. And so one of the things that's interesting, say in Korea, I'm just giving an example. The Korean government actually supports the culture industry quite a bit with any number of ways. And I'll just give you an example that you probably haven't heard of. They even have holidays. I don't know. It's sometimes once every couple of months to where, what's the word to say it? They give like a discount day for families to go to the movies, and it's actually really supportive of movie theaters and the industry as a whole. I'm just giving you one example. Or other things that they might do is they'll support film festivals in Korea, so that is good for the independent film industry along with the more commercial one. So there's various ways that the government, and I'm saying Trump theoretically could support local industry. I'm saying there's different ways to do it. Or you have something like this. So Trump's point of view is he likes to attack universities. This was the headlines today. Trump administration opens new front to strip Harvard of federal funding. It's like, great. The reason why I bring up the education stuff, because if Trump was serious about supporting workers and bringing jobs to the country, you figure out ways to train workers in needed industries. So for example, let's say, use example Harvard. Let's say we decide that that's a national priority and we put funding into universities to educate our workers to do high-tech jobs, to do medical research, or the situation, say film, is we fund film programs to train people to do camera work, to write scripts, to do lighting, to do any number of production things that are needed, to do all of the editing and the CG stuff. Like, you have training programs for these things, and then suddenly we have a educated workforce. That would be one way. I'm just giving examples of different industries you can support by supporting your education, and that matters. Educated workforce, skilled workforce matters. The other way you could support workers, opposed to just doing tariffs, is you support their healthcare, education, transportation, etc. Because what's going on is that when Disney looks around the world for people to hire, from Disney's point of view, there's like, okay, where can I find cheap workers that are skilled, right? And if they go to the UK, for example, and the UK worker has subsidized education, subsidized healthcare, blah, 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 right? All these things that support workers. And then from Disney's point of view, they pay a lower salary, for example, to people in UK, then the American workers seem expensive and they're less trained and less supported by the local government. What I'm trying to say is that if Trump was really serious about helping regular Americans, it would be much more than just tariffs. It'd be supporting Americans in all of their daily life. And yes, maybe you won't get as high of a salary, but you won't need a high salary if much of your costs are reduced, right? I would, and I'm telling the truth of it, I would definitely take a lower salary if I had free healthcare, free education, free transportation. Just think about that. Wouldn't you? Let's say you took a 10% salary cut or whatever, just for example, but you had like all these other things for free, your quality of life is actually much higher. And this is just a different way of thinking about the world that I like to talk with you guys about, because it's something that Americans don't talk about enough, because many Americans have never experienced life in other countries and know what it's like. And I can just tell you, happiness levels go way up if you can reduce costs and support workers and get someone in office who's obviously not Trump, who actually cares about regular people and not just putting money into his pocket. So that's my thoughts on this stuff. I'd like to hear yours, and I'll catch you all in the next video.